Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Episode 107 of the Mystery Reviews. It is Timecop. This was guessed a couple days ahead, so the spoilers are out. And the hints that were given was a 90s cop movie, a 10-year span, Don't Touch Me, and auto-driving cars, along with You're a Bright Boy, Why Don't You Sleep on It, Time Ripples, and an exploding house. So, yeah. Hey, Aline and Na, good to see you. And everybody else who was jumping in the chat, good to see you as well. So, Timecop, 1994. A great movie. And I got a lot of interesting facts for you folks. This movie is directed by Peter Hyams. And it stars Jean-Claude Van Damme, Mia Sara, Ron Silver, Bruce McGill, Gloria Rubin, and Scott Lawrence, where a cop suffers a tragedy and after 10 years of working in a time enforcement agency, goes back to right the wrong against him, along with other things. But yes, and one fun fact about this movie is that it was based on a comic created by Mike Richardson, the founder of Dark Horse Comics. The movie was put into production shortly after the comic's release, so close that they couldn't tell which led to the other. Afterward, a later two-part comic would be released that was faithful to the film story. So in Gainesville, Georgia, the movie begins in 1863. And there's this guy standing in the middle of a road when some Confederate soldiers roll up on him on their horses. And he's saying, well, you know what I think? I think you're carrying a shipment of gold meant for General Lee. And they're like, well, who might you be? A friend to the Confederacy? Well, why don't you show us how friendly you are and step out of the way so we can get on going? I'd be much obliged to, but first you're going to give me that gold. And they're like, dude, no. And so he's like, or I want that. Or he's rather insistent. So when they start pulling their weapons, he pulls out futuristic weapons and just blows their heads off. Full automatic laser sight machine weapon or machine guns. Now, here's the thing, folks. He managed to shoot just the guys. Horses didn't even get tagged once. So it's like, huh. It kind of makes one wonder. So, we then get to Washington, D.C., October 10th, 1994. There is a Senate Oversight Committee, which is Covert Ops. Hey, Davian, good to see you. Yes, I'm feeling okay. And you watched the Meg 2 earlier, and you loved it? That's awesome. Good to know, man. I thought it was good, too. However, I do see the flaws in it. So George Spoda, played by Scott Lawrence, brings in Matuzak and talking about the Dr. Hans Kleindast, who helped with the space program, and he tells them that he also spent 20 years trying to stay away from the press because he's been doing research on time travel. And they were like, time travel? Oh, well, beam me up, Scotty. Oh, glad you're amused, Senator. It's just, here's the thing. He actually did it. And, well, that got their attention. I love how that scene is played out because Scott Lawrence plays it so well that all these people think that he's just messing around until he's like, yeah, except that the good doctor actually did it. And then they're all like, what? They're like, what? I thought that'd get your attention. So they are coming up with the idea for the TEC, or Time Enforcement Commission, and they want one of the police chiefs in D.C. to handle it, which is Matuzak, played by Bruce McGill. And they need funds to run this program. Well, Senator Aaron McComb, the young Senator Aaron McComb, played by Ron Silver, is the, he'll fund it. He'll fund it. And they also talk about how if you throw stone in the water, there are ripples in the water, but now there are ripples in time. And here's something that's also interesting. We already believe there has been a ripple, and they talk about the first ripple of how the CIA broke up an arms deal in Middle Eastern terrorists in Hamburg, Germany. And the payment was made in gold bullion, and it was stamped property of the Confederate States of America. And they said we had this carbon dated and authenticated, and it is real. So, yeah, except that it was, or the carbon dated made it younger because it was brought back through time, or it was brought forward through time. So it wouldn't have the same age as it would have if it had taken the long way through time, or the straight way through time instead of the cheat time travel. So, yeah. And so he tells him, he's like, just think about what I'm saying, senators. Going back through time is a great way to make money. And that actually, you see Aaron McComb's gears start to twist because he reacts to that. He's like, And so we learn that later on, that's exactly what he's going to do. Because he actually says, you know what, I'll help fund this program. So we then end up with another fun fact. This movie is produced by Sam Raimi because he had an interest in making comic book movies. This movie is based off a comic book. He had already done Darkman, and we all know that he went to do Spider-Man and later Multiverse of Madness. So yes, Sam Raimi also did a lot of comic book movies, got producer credits and whatnot. And this is also one where he got a producer credit because he likes comic book movies. And this is technically a comic book movie. We are then in a mall in D.C. where Mia Sara, the beautiful Mia Sara, the only other movie I've known her from was Legend with Tom Cruise. And she's meeting her husband. And I love the little banter between them. I'm meeting my husband. He should not keep you waiting. Well, if I turn around, then, or if I turn around and he's not here, then I'll go home with you. And she turns around and Jean-Claude Van Damme. She's like, you'll do. And it's like, I bet he would. So then he's talking to her and he sees this dude rolling around on rollerblades in a kind of sketchy fashion. So he's like, 1 second. So the dude heists or lifts a purse from an old lady who screams and then almost runs face first into Jean-Claude Van Damme's foot. Read it. Wolverine? Between the lines. I should get the fuck out of here. Yeah. You see that purse? Doesn't look good on you. So he returns the purse, which is all nice, and the woman's like, thank you. And then she thanks Jean-Claude, and the security's hauling the dude off. So it's like, well, that's one way to serve the community, you know? And so she's like, what did you say to him? Well, let's just face it, I know all the right words. And so she's like, I bet you do. And then we see them going up on an escalator. We also see that Jean-Claude Van Damme noticed two guys checking him out before they disappear. When he looks away and then looks back, they're gone. So we then see him go on the escalator with his wife, and they talk and say it's going to rain. We both have the evening off. Why don't we go home and discuss those words that you seem to like so much? And we get the obligatory sex scene. This is early 90s, so sex scenes are obligatory at this point. And, well, I got to say, Mia Sara is actually quite attractive at that time. Let's just say, yeah. Whew! So we then see that the mystery, or she has something to tell Max, her husband. But then he gets a call and he has to pick it up because he's a cop, and he gets called into work, and she's like, this is not how I wanted to do this. And he's like, did you have something to tell me? Yes. Can it wait until I get back? Sure. Well, he goes to leave and he gets smacked and beat up and whatnot. and his wife gets pulled up into the higher room. You see this older gentleman, or you see this gentleman looking down on him like he's the boss of the whole thing. And it's the two guys that were spying on him that are kicking the shit out of him. He's like, "Who are you? You're a brave boy. Why don't you sleep on it?" And they put 2 in his chest. However, he's wearing a bulletproof vest because he is a cop. But these 2 run into the house after they shoot him, and his wife is still screaming. And then as he gets up to the house goes up and blows him backward. And it's like, oh, crap, she was in there. But they're also dead, too. What the heck is going on? I mean, they all just ended up dying in that room. Except that they didn't, because they went back through time. So we don't know this yet, though. So we skip to what you usually would see is that we would skip forward in time, except that this time we go back in time. And we are, in fact, in October 30th, 1929, during the height of the stock market crash of 1929, where the stock market the U.S. economy tanked. The stock market crashed. It was the beginning of the Great Depression. And we see that the police are keeping people back because, well, during that time, suicide rates were at an all-time high. People or stockbrokers were jumping out of their office windows because, well, they lost all their money. You see, they were rather depressed that they put all their money into these stocks, and the stocks just caved. And there's this gentleman known as Mr. Atwood. And he's like, "It's terrible, Mr. Atwood." "Oh, yeah, shit happens." And he walks in, he goes up, and he goes into his office. Now, he starts reading the New York Times and seeing how the stock market is crashing. But investors are still a little bit, excited, hopefully, that the stock market will recover. We all know that it didn't, but at this point, they didn't. And so he's like, listening to these 1920s music, that's Misbehave song. And so he turns that off. He pulls out USA Today from 2004, and he puts on a radio Walkman in 1929. Something's going on here, folks. When I first saw this movie, I'm like, this is 1929. What the fuck? You know, it's kind of wondering how the heck this is happening when I was all of 9 years old watching this movie. Hey, Teresa, it's good to see you. I'm loving the pub crawls that you're doing. I watched the one with Mark with a C. Great stuff. Keep it up. And she's also got one coming up at 4, I believe, today, folks, with My Nerdy Home, Stephanie. So make sure you check out Miss Martin Muses in the chat. So we then see him looking at the stocks in 1929 and 2004. Middle States Oil is at an all-time low. But in 2004, Mid States Oil has a 200% or like a 600% rise, man. It is way up there. So he calls his buddy or his stockbroker buddy, and he's like, "I want 100,000 shares in Middle States Oil." And I'm thinking to myself, he's like, no, just buy it. I have a really good feeling about the future. So after he does that and hangs up, we see these ripples, and in comes a slightly older looking Jean-Claude Van Damme. And he knows exactly. He's like, "Walker, how you doing?" He's like, "How have you been, Lyle?" Well, he pulls out a bag and starts collecting the Walkman, the papers, and whatnot. And he's like, "You couldn't have done this on your own. Who you're working for?" He's like, "It doesn't matter. If he doesn't get the money here, he'll just get it somewhere else." And so he's like, I have to take you back, man. And so while he's talking to Lyle pushes a alarm button. So two guys, one with a really handlebar mustache, comes in. I went 10 rounds with this guy or somebody himself. And so, well, Jean-Claude Van Damme is a martial artist, not a barefist boxer, so he easily handles that guy. He's like, I saw Tyson beat Spinks on TV. So then he knocks out the other guy, kicks him in the nuts, kicks him in the face, busts a lamp that's wooden and whatnot. So he has two sticks, and the guy puts on brass knuckles. And, well, he gets his ass easily handed to him, and then Jean-Claude Van Damme takes one of the wooden rods and cracks him in the nuts from behind, and it's like, oof. So, yeah, that's got to hurt. I haven't seen this movie in a very long time. Need to rewatch. I don't remember this part of the movie. It's the beginning of the movie, shortly in the beginning of the movie. And good to see you. Don't let them burn. So, we then see him get shot at by a future gun. Lyle starts shooting at him with this future gun and scares the shit out of everybody in the adjacent room because, well, everybody else is basically hearing the gunshots and whatnot. And so he finally runs out of bullets, and he's like, just let me go, Max. And he's like, nope. And I know you got to go. I'm sorry, Davian. And I'm sorry for starting late. It's just that the power went out and stuff was going on. So, but have a good day. And, yep. Thank you. And yes, I will see you for Sharknado 3. It's tonight. 4 is next week. But yes, thank you so much. So we then see him drop a name. You ever hear the name McComb? Aaron McComb? Bullshit. He's doing all of this to fund his campaign. He already owns half the guys in the TEC. And if he doesn't, or if I talk, my family is dead. He's going to go back and wipe out my grandparents, my mother, my father, my freaking cat. Or my fucking cat. And he's like, look, I'm talking about my family, man. I have to bring it back. I have no choice. Neither do I. So Atwood shoves down his hands and jumps out the window. Now you think it's like, oh shit, you know, he's about to lose the witness. Well, they managed to trigger or Walker triggers the return module, or track and return module that they call it, and they end up sending him back into the future, which is the TEC in Washington, D.C. in 2004. And Atwood doesn't testify. He's like, testify, I can do what I can. And he doesn't. He's like, does the defendant have something to say on their behalf? It's a judge trial, or it's time trial, essentially. And he doesn't. And he's like, yes, no, take care of yourself, Max. Now, here's the thing. If Atwood testified, it wouldn't make a difference, because Atwood would then be erased in the past. McComb would go back and wipe him out. And then nobody would remember what happened, because Atwood didn't exist. The ripples would reach the future, and the future would change. So, yeah, that would suck. So it's actually good that he didn't testify, you know, because by him just dying in the past, because they sentence him to die, and then he ends up dropping down where he was falling from. And I like the old copper in the past is like, poor bastard, tomorrow may have been a brighter day. So, yeah, he died in the past where everybody knew him back then. Now, another fun fact, folks. Timecop was released around the same time with Shawshank Redemption. Now, we all know that Shawshank Redemption is a great film. Great freaking film. However, it beat Shawshank Redemption in the box office. Shawshank Redemption, while most would say it is the better of the two films, only made $58.3 million in the box office due to poor marketing, where Timecop made $101.6 million in the box office. And it's interesting, as Shawshank Redemption is hailed as a masterpiece, yet Timecop is just one of those action flicks from the 90s. So moving on, Matuzak, which is the boss of the TEC, is going over briefings about how there's some activity in Camp David in 1979, and they believe it's a kill team out of Iran, and it's like that's the third time this month. While the CIA is looking for their launch site, they just haven't been able to find it yet. So he wants 2 teams before and after the event to smoke these bastards. And then there's Los Angeles, 1902. Somebody is buying up Beverly Hills for chump change to get ahead of the real estate boom. And before he can go any further, we see that Spoda from the Senate comes in with McComb and 2 other senators. And we also see that everybody is hiding a bunch of shit, and McComb's face is on a dartboard because he's running for president. And it's like, well, hide that dartboard, you know? And so they give him a tour of the facility because some of these senators are on the fence on whether to keep funding it. And so he's like, these are different agents, Agent Walker, and McComb takes an interest in Walker. So he's like, I would like to be Agent Walker to accompany us, if it's all right. Hear about his latest assignment. And he tells him about how he lost his witness. And he's like, well, did he give you a name? He's like, yep. Well, why don't you arrest him? I lost my witness. So there's no evidence. But he keeps on giving McComb the eye that is very suggestive that he knows exactly what McComb is doing. So that's why McComb is basically saying, you see, that, or they also say that Atwood was a TEC agent. And he's like, that is why this TEC commission should be shut down, because it's full of corrupt cops, like this Agent Atwood. And Spoda is like, well, imagine not having this business senator. Who would police time travel then? Well, unfortunately, why don't we just pass a law that prevents time travel? That way we don't have to have the TEC and waste billions of dollars to keep funding it. And so he's like, I'm sorry, folks, I need to get back to the Hill. And he tells the younger senator, he's like, I hope you will vote against continued appropriations. Well, that didn't go so well. And let's see here. Now, we then see that Parker Datalink has a superconducting chip, and we also learn that McComb was partnered with Parker, but sold out just before the company got the patent on the chip, and it cost him a few $1 billion. So another danger of time travel is contacting the former selves. Hey, Vanya, it's okay, man. I did say I would go live at 2:30. Unfortunately, I changed my mind because I needed to get this done, you know? I'm sorry. So the danger of contacting your past self is that the same matter can't occupy the same space. So say my future self was here and he put his hands on me. Me and my future self would merge and die, causing a massive ripple effect, which sets up a good moment for later, or is a good foretelling of what happens later. So then we see that McComb is in his futuristic limo, and he shoves his his future chief of staff's head against the wall, because the guy's like, I don't see how you can get the funds in time, even if you go back in another trip. And he's like, well, how much is it going to cost me? $50 million. $50 million. Or Agent Walker's already cost me that much. So we're going to have a little chat with him, the chat that nobody, or that somebody remembers for a lifetime. And so Walker and Matuzak have a talk, and he's like, hey, or McComb was pretty interested in you today. He's like, he interests me. Atwood named him. You're shitting me. Nope. Well, then why didn't he testify? He said he threatened to go back and kill his or wipe out his family. And so he's also looking at a picture of his wife, which was the last photo that was also taken in the past. And we saw it taken at the mall. And so he says, if I can't go back to save her, this scumbag isn't going back to steal money. And so he's like, go home, man. Or do you think we will invent time travel someday, or maybe that it has already been invented? Well, I'm pretty sure that it's probably been invented sometime in the future. But we wouldn't know because we will not live to see that time. A lot of people say that time travel is indeed possible nowadays. I haven't seen any technology that suggests it. And we haven't seen anything in the past that suggests time travel has already occurred sometime in the future. So, believe me, the ripples would be rippling through time, meaning we would see possibilities of it happening. Now, yes, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that suggest, oh my God, it's the same person in all these different photos throughout time. And it's like, yeah, except that it could be a coincidence, or it could be that somebody put those people in those photos. You ever think of that? It's very easy to do nowadays, folks. It's called Photoshop. So, we get the auto-driving cars, and Max is home, and when he opens the door, he is told that there are no new messages, which is important because of an upcoming scene. And we also learned from the news that there is literally a white supremacist party in politics in that 2004. From this movie, it's like the white supremacist party is losing funds. And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, could it be any more on the nose? I mean, this was done in 1994. The LA riots obviously had a huge impact on this movie, apparently, because, well, there's a white supremacist party in the frickin' in politics in 2004. So, sorry, there's a hair on my nose, and it's really bothering me. So he watches a video of him and his wife doing a birdhouse build, and he falls asleep to that. And so he wakes up because his messages thing is coming off again, and he wakes up to dodge a stun gun. So it's like, oh shit. And then there's this knife guy that scares the hell out of him. Some say UFOs are actually US from the future, or us from the future. I wouldn't know, nor do I care about the whole UFO thing. I'm worried about a lot more important things right now. And so it's McComb's man who was in the limo with him, not his future chief of staff, but one of his hired thugs. And after the knife guy gets stunned up by the stun gun with 50,000 volts, we get the stun gun shot at Van Damme, and he does the split in his underwear, looking at the guy as the water hits him as he's shocking the water. So he ends up shocking himself. And I absolutely love this. He ends up throwing the guy out of his apartment, crashing through the door and the banister, and that's when Agent Fielding comes in. And he's like, he tried to kill me. There's another one inside. Who are you? IA, Internal Affairs. Well, a lot of people look like each other. Exactly. That's also something that a lot of people don't realize. I mean, I have met 3 of my own doppelgangers in this time alone, or between now and 7 years ago, because 7 years ago was when I met my first doppelganger. So IA thinks that Walker may be dirty because Atwood was his partner, and it's like, yeah, he's bitching at Matuzak for it because he's like, what does IA want with me? Well, Atwood was your partner. They think you might not be on, or they think you might be on the take. He's like, she's going to get in my way. Dude, my hands are tied. I can't help you on that regard. So, the self-driving cars were predictive programming. The research and technology, they research the technologies of the future. Yeah. But also when it shows that these things are, the real cars, they were just built around a normal frame of a car, and it was somebody else driving the car. Because if a self-driving car pulls into a freaking driveway going like at a clip like that, that's pretty freaking nuts. So they hear that a phase 4 has jumped to a phase 6, and so they're like, okay, we need to go. And as soon as they leave the office, it just cuts to a naked woman. You can see bush and everything on the bed and porn music. And she gets up reaching toward the camera, and you get the idea of what's going on. And then it cuts to the guy, Ricky, who is laughing his head off until his boss rips the thing off his head and is like, damn it, Ricky, I catch you fucking this machine again, or I'll break your neck. Smacks him. He's like, yeah, sorry, Chief. Looks like safe sex to me. It's like, Jesus, dude. I mean, they really went there with this, folks. I mean, this movie risked an X rating with that scene, I'm willing to bet, because you almost saw full V in that. So they realized, or they're talking about the phase 4 that just jumped straight to 6, didn't even touch the 5. And it's in Washington, D.C. It's a very serious case because phase 1 is worrisome. Phase 3 is getting serious. 4, anything above a 3 is very serious. That split was the money shot from back in the days for that movie. We all knew Van Damme for that split. Yep, he can do all sorts of splits. I mean, he's very flexible. And so we get the Vollmers joke, and they're getting ready to launch. And you see that Fielding is very nervous. And I love that it's like BP's rising and her heart rate's going ballistic. And I love what Bruce McGill, it's like, if she farts, she'll get ahead of the pod. It is one of the funniest lines in the movie. And so he tells her to focus on something relaxing before launch. And so she pulls up her family and she's like, what do you think about not swallowing my tongue? And she's like, have you ever lost anybody on a launch before? Ask the Vollmers. Okay, I will. Where are they? You see those 2 red dots? And there's the wall at the end of the runway. And it's like, oh, God. Now, folks, when they see that these people are going back in time, it looks to be like it's very painful because their features just start distorting and rippling and whatnot. So it's like, oh, my God, this is... And you see freaking Ricky just smiling. And then he's like, they're away. Is this the hottest thing or what? And I'm thinking to myself, dude, have you ever gone back through time? That would probably be very painful. So they end up falling in the Potomac River. And it's like, God damn, Ricky. So it's October 9th, 1994, which is a very important year for Walker because his wife dies tomorrow that day or that year. And we see, or they get to the area where the ripple effect is happening. And it's a talk between the younger McComb and Parker, which was referenced earlier in the film. I like how this comes to play. McComb wants out. And Parker's like, I have no faith in politicians, so yeah, I'll buy you out. Here's the money, take it, and go. Well, that's when the future people start to come in. It's McComb's thugs, and then McComb himself comes in. He's like, if I were you, I wouldn't cash that check. It'll cost you more than you'll ever know. And he's like, hey, Jack, good to see you. He's like, what is this? Are you supposed to be his father? Do I really look that old? And Aaron McComb, or younger McComb, is like, I am a United States Senator. Any offense against me or any assaults against me as a federal offense. Would you just stop it? Just stop it. Get a grip. I remember having bigger balls. He's like, and you see the future self walking around the younger self, and he goes reaching. He's like, don't touch me. The same matter can't occupy the same space. And he's like, same matter? You have an oversight committee meeting coming up. Covert, it's not till next week. Time travel, somebody says, gets a big laugh. He's like, oh, Christ, you're me. You're getting it. So he's like, or you hear Parker ask, he's like, how far back did you come? Because now he's fascinated because he realized his chip works. So he's kind of fascinated in the event that this is happening, you know? Well, McComb comes right up to him and just pistol whips him. He's like, do not interrupt me when I am talking to myself. Well, that's when the bust happens. And we see that McComb is busted, and he's like, he's like, do you know how inappropriate that is, Walker? Do I look frozen to you? And he's like, just put your hands up. And then he tells him about the track and return mode. He's like, throw it up here. You're going to leave, just strand me back here? And so he's like, I want to see how you can keep the gun on me and get down here. What are you going to do? You're going to jump? Well, that's how the Palmers would do it. And you see that Fielding is right next to him, and everybody drops their weapons. And, well, we see, Walker then comes down, but Fielding turns on him. So it's like, oh, shit, you know? So we get Walker, or after Walker is disarmed, McComb kills Parker. So it's like, oh, shit, you know? So when Walker starts getting away and moving around, you see Ron Silver's older McComb freaking out. He is now very pissed off because everything is riding on this last mission of his. Because, oh, shit, he can really fuck up my entire life. Because if he gets caught, and if Walker lives, he can report it to anybody in the future. They may not know what the hell he's talking about because there's just been a major change in the past, but he could still convince somebody. It's like this has all been changed because he changed the future. So you see the younger McComb going for one of the guns, and Walker turns up and kicks him in the side of the face right here, causing a massive scar on his face, which you actually see the older McComb have the scar form like right there and then. It's like, oh, damn, you know? So, one of the flaws, or there are a lot of flaws in this scene where you see where he was kicked, it's slightly lower than where the scar forms. And also the eye line between the younger Aaron and the older Aaron is actually very different, shall we say, as well as him reacting to some of the things. It's like there's a little bit of a time delay in some of the reactions, but for the most part, it's pretty solid. I'll watch the rest later. I have to jump on a stream in a few minutes. Good job so far. Thank you. Don't let them burn. Have a good day, and yeah, thank you so much. Hey, how are you, Ruben Thomas? I'm doing well. I'm doing mystery review today because tomorrow I'm going to be at a surgery. So yeah. We then get the frozen arm effect, which was pretty cool, where Van Damme shoves a guy into liquid nitrogen gassing, and it freezes his arm like this, and then he kicks it. So from here down to here, the dude's arm is just shattered and gone. And you see the ice crystals kind of like moving a little bit. It's like, oh my God, dude, that dude is dead. So I was like, should have said freeze. And that's when Fielding fights him. He's like, I'm not going to fight a woman. Then don't. So she starts kicking his ass, and then he stops her, and he's like, change my mind. Pow! Knocks her down, but then McComb grabs the tracking module or the return module, and she's like, don't you, or tell me he's going to kill your family. Yeah, he should have said freeze. And she's like, don't you leave me, goddammit. Who are you talking to? So he shoots Fielding, and he tells him, he's like, stay here, Walker. In my future, you're dead. Well, the police start showing up, and Walker returns to the future. And I like the effects of the whole future. When they go through the portal, it splashes back, and then you see the ripple outward, which is pretty cool effects. And so what used to be a sign that said Parker Data Link Systems now says McComb Data Link. So they're like, I'm glad you made it back. They're getting ready to tear up these tracks. And he's like, McComb, who else? And he's like, something's wrong, man. And she's trying to explain what's going on. And nobody's buying it. Now McComb is buying the presidency because now he has billions thanks to the chip that he now has his name on the patent. So now he's a billionaire and he's buying the presidency. So you then see that Walker has to convince them. He's like, fun fact, folks, I'll get to it in a little bit, but a fun fact about Timecop is quite interesting when I get to it. Believe me, when I get to it, you'll know, so you're going to have to stay tuned for it. But he's like, if I could prove it, or I could prove it. He's searching for Fielding, and there's no record and whatnot, so he's like, if all of this is what you say is true, how is our presidential candidate making these expeditions into the past? Oh, buddy of mine, the prototype was never dismantled, he tells him. Kleindienst is in Calverton, Maryland. And he's like, short drive from Washington. And they look at the energy readings. It's identical to the TECs. So he's like, he's like, stay out of this, Ricky. Or send me back. Not yet. He's like, or they won't let us do that. Stay out of it, Ricky. Would it be too much trouble to call me Richard? Now, Ricky was a very playful guy. He had like a Hawaiian shirt on earlier, and now he's just fully dressed to the nines with his hair tied back into a ponytail. So it's like, yeah, he has to basically dress more appropriately, you know? So they go to shunt the fuel vents, but it's actually to make an unscheduled time or plan to escape the future so that you can fix what's going on in the past, because now McComb is planning to erase Walker. He's like, we're going to have to kill him before he joins the TEC. So that's leading to what happened in the beginning of the film. So now Walker and Matuzak are hijacking the launch, and Matuzak gets shot but manages to hit the launch button to send Walker back. So Matuzak might not be alive by the time Walker comes back unless he does a big enough change. And he has to change a lot in order to have it happen. So before we get there, another fun fact is that the music of Timecop was written by Mark Isham, who did the Point Break score, Cool World score, and Blade score. Robert Lamb, however, would be the person to compose and conduct the music. So we then get back into the past, and the truck. I love this shot because it shows a truck coming right behind him as he comes through the portal. And so he has to drop down, and it's like, oh, shit, you know? Ricky was fun because I especially like Van Damme's line, God damn, Ricky. He only used it once, but after his second trip appearing before an incoming truck, he would have been worried it would have been warranted saying it again. Not really, because it was Matuzak who set him back this time, and it was a chaotic situation. But still, it would have been fun. He's like, God damn it, Ricky. So we see as he's arriving at the hospital because he's looking for Fielding, Melissa just leaves the hospital as he arrives. She's leaving in a car, or I think a taxi cab or something. So we then see that Fielding, or he finds Fielding, he's posing as a cop in the past, or he passes for a cop even though his jacket kind of gives him away. And Fielding wants to set things right. And she's like, I want to go home. I want to set things right. And maybe you can find that you could set things right for yourself too. Basically saying you might be able to set things right. But it's like, how would you know that? You don't know what happened with him, you know? I'm surprised that truck didn't stop after seeing a guy appear out of thin air. Well, here's the thing. MJ, the actress Mia Sara is very much a hottie, but the truck is coming at a clip of 45 to 50 miles an hour. Slamming on the brakes still would have hit Van Damme, or still would have gone over him. So it's like, yeah, I don't care. There's no way I could stop. Not to mention a 18-wheeler, if you slam on the brakes, there's a very big chance that here's the front, back end is going to go like this, or it's going to go like this and jackknife. So yeah, trucks, if they see something obstructing them that is a like human size, they're going to beep and hope you get the fuck out of the way. Otherwise, they're going to turn you into mush. And then they're going to have to slow down slowly, because that amount of momentum, you can't just slam on the brakes. It's a very dangerous situation. I know a friend who drives a truck, and he had to slam on the brakes. And yes, it caused the jackknife, causing a lot of problems. So we see that he finds the blood, but he also sees Melissa Walker. And that he drops Fielding's blood and grabs the thing, opens the note. He remembers that something went unsaid between him and his wife. She wanted to tell him something. It turns out she was pregnant. Oh, shit. Or that's what I meant to type, slow down. Yeah. Well, yeah. But it sells it more if the truck didn't stop, you know? But, yeah. So he's now realizing, oh, shit, I'm surprised it didn't slow down after passing over him. Yeah, I mean, I would have too, because it'd be like, oh, my God, dude. But also, you didn't hear a bump he didn't feel a bump or a smack against his truck, so that's why he didn't slow down. Maybe he was trying to get away from the cops. Who knows? I don't know. But you see now that Max knows the untold secret, he goes to Fielding, but Fielding just died because somebody put an air bubble in her freaking or in her IV. So yeah, fair enough. And so she dies, and one of the orderlies comes in and implicates him, like, help, security. And so she's chasing him throughout the hospital, and then the guards are chasing after him. And it's like, oh, shit, you know? So we see him escape there, and it's the mystery men that actually kill the two mystery men from the beginning of the movie are there, and they killed Fielding. Those are his time enforcement henchmen to kill anybody in the past, you know? And they got the freaking creepy hair, man. That the mo cut, or the mohawk, and longer hair at the bottom is just ridiculous. So he now goes to the mall to find Melissa to help save her. What baffles me is that Max didn't tell the orderly to make sure nobody but him enters her room. Well, here's the thing. They could have appeared in the room as they were coming back through time. Kleindast's time module is able to send you to a specific point, where the TEC is less specific. And so it's possible that they appeared right in the room and left afterward. It still would have caused me to wonder, how did they get in there, you know? But you do make a good point. So he sees the rollerblade thief, the Future Max does, and I like how the Future Max is like, this is for what you're going to do, and throws him into a display stand, crashing it and wrecking it. He's like, and the guy's like, what the? So it's like, what the fuck? And so he finds Melissa, and he's like, or he sees that the mystery men see him, so they start heading after him. So he has to get her away, and she's like, what happened to you? And she's like, just tell me what happened to you. He's like, you have to trust me, please. I love you. Trust me. And so he gets away from them, and she's like, you're not Max. It is me. 10 years from now. 10 or so. He's like, remember, Matuzak, the new job, time travel. And she's like, time travel. And so she's like, what am I like 10 years from now? Just as you are now. Perfect. So it's a nice little scene. And he explains the truth to her, withholding her death. Because imagine what is going on here, you know? Now, there are some major plot problems and writing problems with this whole thing, because it's like, what are you here to prevent? Changes in the past, he tells her. That's all he tells her. It's amazing how seeing Melissa's test gets the wheels turning in his head, realizing that Melissa wasn't meant to die, that it wasn't part of McComb's changing things, so saving her isn't breaking the law. Actually, technically it is, because you would cause a ripple effect. Having Max or having Melissa live could alter Max's decisions through time. He might not even join the TEC. So changing or saving her could possibly prevent him from existing, because that version of Max would be a different Max. It could, or like they said, you can't go back and kill Hitler, as much as we all would like to, because doing so could possibly destroy mankind. Because Hitler's death, at that right time, was necessary to happen at that point in time. It's a fixed point, so to speak. It's like the Flashpoint paradox. Barry's mother's death is a fixed point, meaning it has to happen in order for everything else, or in order for time to have a full linear effect. So when he tells her, he's like, today you have something very special to tell him. How do you know that? I just told you. But the reason she died was because of McComb going back and trying to kill young Max, so it wasn't supposed to happen. Very true. However, everything in the future is already fucked up anyway, so he figures nobody will remember it anyway. He's changing this because there have been too many changes in the past already. So he's trying to set things right. So you see the repeat scene of There's Never Enough Time. You see the kiss and the photo taken. And you see, I like the scene that shows two Jean-Claude Van Damme's, where it shows him walking by, and then it shows the old one turning away so he doesn't see his face. Yeah, fair enough. So we see the slight changes because you see her, or you see that the dialogue is slightly different. There's never enough time. Never enough time for what? Compared to now, there is never enough time. Never enough time for what? And then it plays the same way. You see the slight changes because now she's like, what are you here to prevent? And he's like, changes in the past. And just trust me, please. You can't let him know that I am here. and then he gives her a kiss. It's like, why don't you just kiss me in the future the next time you see me? You know, because she doesn't ask the relevant question until later on, because it's like, or because it's like, what the hell, or why would you kiss your past self with such passion unless you haven't seen her in a very, very long time? You would just go back and kiss your wife in the future if she was alive. There's a problem there. The two Van Dammes reminded me of Double Impact. Yes, this is actually the second movie in which Jean-Claude Van Damme plays two separate versions of himself. Reminds me of Double Impact, where Van Damme plays twin brothers separated at birth. Yep, and that's actually, this movie and Double Impact are actually tied for the second place of my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, my first one being Bloodsport. So, yeah. Funny thing, there's also a lot of there's a couple of parallels between Timecop and Double Impact. Double Impact has two Van Dammes, Asians in it, and a very explicit sex scene. So those movies were very much what's the word? Coincidental, shall we say. So another fun fact, Super Nintendo would release a video game adaptation of Timecop. You wouldn't have known about the game or known that from the game's artwork, which made Walker look like Cyclops from X-Men because he has a visor that looks very much like like Cyclops. However, it is a sequel to the movie in which Walker is trying to stop the creator of time travel, Kleindos, from trying to fix all these other points. So you go back to like World War II and like Los Angeles 1902 and other things. And it's the realistic graphics that were popular at the time, thanks to like games like Mortal Kombat, which they used actual actors to move around and do the moves, and then put them into the games. It was however, this video game was later largely forgotten. We then see the young Macomb gets a message, and he clears his entire schedule because he thinks it's a message from himself from the future. Because I first saw Van Damme in Double Impact, that's my favorite Van Damme film. To be completely honest, that is also the first film that I saw Jean-Claude Van Damme in. So, yeah. You're not the first one who saw that or Van Damme, the first one on that one. So another fun fact is that this is Jean-Claude's, and this is the very fun fact. This is Jean-Claude Van Damme's highest grossing film to date. No other film that Jean-Claude Van Damme did after this has matched the gross earnings to Timecop. This is literally peak Van Damme. And believe it or not, it's actually a very good film, so it explains it. Due to his success in the 80s and 90s, his fame peaked with Timecop, and this is still the highest grossing film to date. His fame would dwindle, but a comeback in the 2000s and 2010 would still happen, still not surpassing Timecop in excess. It is not seen as his best film, though. Other people think that Sudden Death is his best film. Others think that Bloodsport is his best film. I know that Steve Kenobi likes Lionheart as his favorite Van Damme film. We'd all love to go back and kill Hitler, but would the future we create be worse than what we have currently? That's an interesting thing to explore, and yet is terrifying to think of. Exactly. Here's the thing. There was a show called 11/11/63 or something or around those lines, where James Franco went back in time to save Kennedy. And when he came back to the future was dystopian. Preventing the death of Kennedy led to some major ripples in time. You see, the death of Kennedy is also basically a fixed point in time. It is an event so influential that it changed the course of history. If Kennedy lived, it could lead to gross disruptions of the timeline, apparently. So we then see them back at the house where she's about to tell him, or they're in bed and she wants to tell him the truth, but she doesn't get the chance. And so she goes downstairs and he's like, you didn't tell him? He didn't give me a chance. You have to keep him up there. Or because she then sees, or she's like, what, or do you have a picture of me in the future? No, nothing recent. Am I dead? No, you're not dead. It's like, no, you're not dead. And she asked the relevant question because she's like, what's it like in the future? So he's like, you're still beautiful. We're still together. And he's like, do you have a picture? No, nothing recent. Am I dead? No, you're not dead. Except that we know that she dies at this moment if she isn't saved, you know? So it's like, oh shit, dude. But then they see that the bad guys are coming. And so he's like, you got to keep him upstairs. Whatever you do, just keep him upstairs. So she's like, Max, I don't want you to go. I'll be right back. I promise. So she drops the bomb. I am pregnant. And so it's like, hey, great. So he listens to that and then he heads out to stop them. He's like, surprise. And he's like, who the fuck are you? Friend of the family. And he thwarts the initial murder attempt. But it sets off a shotgun, which alerts the younger Max. And so she's like, don't go down there. And so he goes to the power box and shuts off the power, saving the other man, or his older self. And then we see him run off into the woods. So it's like, what happened? He knew it was coming. It was a TEC cop. Son of a bitch doesn't know how to die. He'll learn tonight. You don't kill him, you don't go back. So we get to the whole fight, which eventually leads to the action and danger, which is really good in this film. And the way that they're doing it, or the way that also Melissa gets to save Max when they're dangling from the house due to almost getting thrown off the roof, she grabs the gun that the bad guy dropped or plugs him so that they can get away. Well, we then see that older or younger Max is climbing up on the roof to get around to the other side to thwart some other bad guys, except one guy's there and ends up shooting him off the roof. So it's like, how the hell is he alive from that? Well, good thing we do know he has a bulletproof vest. So, another fun fact. Sudden Death went straight into production due to Timecop. Peter Hyams would direct both Timecop and Sudden Death. And Sudden Death's production was greenlit immediately due to positive test screenings of Timecop, knowing it would be a hit. Universal wanted Hyams and Jean-Claude Van Damme to team up as soon as possible. So that's a nice little moment there. So then we see young Max shot off the roof, but we know that he had the vest, so the old Max is kicking the shit out of everybody in the house until he sees the older McComb holding Melissa at gunpoint. That was a great moment, Melissa using the gun. So much of a fighter, yet she wasn't much of a fighter, yet she had the moment to be badass. Exactly. Well, she is the wife of a cop, so she would have a little bit of a knowledge of handguns or of weapons. So we see them prepping a bomb, which we know blew up the house earlier, and we see her or the two McCombs, because the young McComb shows up, and he's like, "What are you doing here? You told me to come here, or you called my office. I never made any call, you freaking idiot." And so he's like, "Hey, don't argue with yourself. I made the call." So we see that Melissa is still being held, and yet Van Damme looks down and has his hand like this and starts counting down with his fingers. And when he gets down, she hits him. However, she still takes a shot through the shoulder. But he grabs young McComb, and he's like, you two should be closer. Keep him away from me. I must be on Broadway. I'm still kicking. And so because the way he said that, I'm still kicking, I must be on Broadway, was because of older McComb saying, all that fancy kicking you do, it only works for people on Broadway. Well, we get the scene of the two McCombs merging. Now, when he actually puts his hand out like no, you see that young McComb's body literally warps around the other arm, but still contacts it. And it's because time literally tried to save McComb's hand, or save McComb, but it couldn't because it was a very inevitable motion that caused him to link with his older self. So then you see the merge, and this is some of the worst CGI I've ever seen, but you also see the ripples like shaking back and forth and spreading out. This is causing a massive ripple in time because McComb in the future at this point owns the time traveling stuff, or the tech. So he's a billionaire in the future that's buying the presidency. So now there is a major ripple that old McComb and young McComb have just merged and died. While I understand the whole same matter can't occupy the same space works in Timecop, would touching your alternate self really warp the two when traveling through time? Yes, most likely. We honestly can't tell for sure, though, because we've never had such an event take place. So Max has to get his family out and or get his wife out there because his older self, or he saved his younger self from the guy that was going to kill him. And he's like, what do you want? You're a bright boy. Why don't you sleep on it? I did that. And then he killed the guy and snaps his neck. And he makes sure that his younger self passes out. So, because he was also put in a sleeper hold. So, yeah, he would pass out. So he gets his wife out of the house just as the house goes up. Now, this is a major plot hole, folks, for the ending of the film. That house still went up. You saw that house get demolished from the C4. And he manages to get out and lay his wife against Matt, or against his younger self, without touching his younger self. So then he returns to the future, and his wife was saved. Now, before we get to the rest, fun fact: this movie led to a TV series in 1997, 9-episode season out of there were supposed to be 13 episodes, but because of low viewership, the show failed, and they didn't even air the last 5 or 4 episodes. So, yeah, coming back to the future, it is fixed somewhat because you see Parker data link system, and which doesn't make sense because Parker was murdered the day before, so it really doesn't make sense. So, yeah, imagine that. And you see that Matuzak is still walking around. He's like, hey, what's up? And he's like, what happened to you? What are you talking about? You're walking around. Yeah, I've been doing that as too. Is that seen as odd? So he's like, everything's changed. And he's like, hey, what's going on with Senator McComb? Because he sees that it's Parker Daddling still. Senator McComb, look, if you need time off, just ask for it. Don't pretend like you're addled in the head. I have a blank spot. A blank spot? You got a hole in your head. 10 years ago, McComb canceled all his meetings, disappeared. Nobody's seen or heard from him since. You know? If I were to change one detail about the ending, I'd have had future Max take a bullet during the fight when Melissa is saved. He dies, and she wakes to bury him, leading to a new life with no memory gaps. Possible, yeah. Interesting. But I actually like this one, or the ending that this one has, because it really is a decent ending. So when we learn that, or we then see Fielding again, and Fielding is walks by and he's like, next time stay out of trouble. And she's like, do I know you? I guess not. Oh, by the way, Bobby Morgan's still waiting for a second chance. She knows exactly what that means, but she's like, wait, how does he know this? Because when they went back in time, she's like, I wish I could call my younger self up and tell me not to sleep with Bobby Morgan. It's kind of disappointing because her birthday is like the next day. That way, young Max can either not take the job or still do it based on Melissa's story. Either way, he has a new future to look forward to. That is very true. I mean, yeah, I do get the fact that there would be memory gaps and whatnot. So that is actually a plot hole because memory gaps or the memories should hit him as he is going back through time. However, it's odd. So he ends up talking about going home, or he gets in his car to go home, and it takes him back to the house that just blew up 10 years prior. So it's like, how is that house still there? And his son comes out, and his son is all of 9 years old or 10 years old, depending on what time it is, because he would be 9 years old because, well, 9-month gap and all for pregnancy to go through. And he or his wife is alive. Now, it's like she should remember that, or she should at least remember that there was him. What kind of day did you have? And he's like, a crazy one. And his son's like, or mom said you barbecue hot dog, or you'd grill hot dogs. Absolutely. And he's like, or so she's like, well, all right, well, come on in because I have something to tell you. And he's like, take your time. I'm not going anywhere. And it's a beautiful ending. Now, the last fun fact, while Timecop was a success, it was not seen as anything successful. People at the time saw it as just another dumb action flick, but it has since become a cult classic. At the time, there were unfair comparisons to Terminator and Back to the Future, which led to this movie not being seen as a success, even though it was a box office success. So that is the end. Now we are getting to the scoring for Timecop. There are major conflicts in the story of major plot holes. So this movie also has dated special effects that look nothing real. So with all that, objectively, without bias, this film is around a 6.5. It passes by the skin of its teeth. In 10 years, I think they'd have rebuilt the house. Early in the film, when Future Max was watching home movies, I believe they built the first house together. They were building a birdhouse in that thing. That's one of the reasons why he actually convinces her that it is him. If I need to build a birdhouse, I know who to talk to. Because earlier that year, they were building the birdhouse. That was going to look much like their own house. So, subjectively speaking, this film is a 10 or is a 9 out of 10. I really like it. I do see the flaws, however, even subjectively, I cannot dismiss them. But, however, they will not take away from the score as much as an objective score would. There are major problems with this movie. However, subjectively, I still very much enjoy it. It's actually my second or my third favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme film. Moviegoer, this film keeps your ass in the seat. It keeps your ass in the seat so you can enjoy it. So this movie is definitely a 10 out of 10. Hints for the next movie. Next week, I should be fully healed from my surgery, so we're going back to Tuesday for my normal mystery reviews. And it's a cop movie from the 2000s, and a quote from the movie, "My name is not John," and Bridget Fonda. those are your hints for next week's, folks. Thank you so much to Vanya, MJ1 Media, Mega Jetty, Ruben Thomas, Don't Let Them Burn, Davian Donaldson, Miss Martin Muses, and Elena Na for all tuning in. Stay tuned for tonight, folks. I am going live at 8 p.m. to talk about Sharknado 3. And for tomorrow and Wednesday, I will not be streaming, or Thursday for that matter. I'm going to take it easy so I can recover from my surgery. I don't even know what to expect in the aftermath of my surgery. So things are going to be happening because I've never had the surgery before. So they're going to be talking me through it tomorrow. And I will keep you all updated on what's going on. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Y'all are freaking awesome people. In terms of, before I go, I will highlight this last one from Mega Jetty. In terms of story, I'd give it 9 VHS tapes out of 10. In terms of action, I'd give it 10 Van Damme splits out of 10. In terms of sex appeal, I'd give it 10 saxes out of 10. Overall, I'd give it an A. All right, that's fair. And Vanya is a 6.8 out of 10 for him. That's fair. That's fair. All righty, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you tune in for Sharknado 3 tonight. Also, if you want to catch my Gina Carano video, it's on my channel right now about how is she going to sue Disney or is she not, thanks to Elon Musk. So definitely check it out. And make sure you watch it all the way through. This is not the same kind of video that everybody else did yesterday. I give my own thoughts, and I also give some harsh criticisms on Elon. So anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. You all are amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and always remember to stay humble, and I'll see you tonight.